Winter Rose, written by Panwadee, Ponglada K.Ittimakin. Episode 17. You should stay home and rest today before we return to Rio. It was the last day of their honeymoon, which had been so different to the usual pattern. Although they had spent all 6 days together in total privacy, Enrique had kept the promise he had given her on their wedding night that he would not force himself upon her, even though, as her husband, he had every right to do so. Time and time again, he had to wrestle with his desires, afraid that he would break his word. They went for drives to admire the scenery, enjoy swimming and fishing from a boat, arriving back home pleasantly tired every day. In the evenings, he escorted her to the door of her bedroom before retiring to his own room. He himself was not unaware of the irony. He had never before controlled his passion like this when he was with a woman, but now, with this woman, his wife, his pity for her compelled him to do so. The story of her past life that Irie had told him had convinced him that even now, Irie was reluctant to love and even more afraid of physical passion. The lesson she had learned from being abandoned by her real mother and brought up by another woman had made her incapable of giving her love to any man, even to Jake, who had regarded himself as her lover. Her stepbrother was the only exception for Irie. He was the one person she could love without fear. Her love for him was boundless, and for his sake alone, she had sacrificed herself in marriage. Aware of this, the thought of doing anything to harm her stuck in Enrique's throat. That's no problem, except what will we eat if we don't go out? Irie's manner and voice seemed more affectionate. Don't worry, there is some food in the fridge. I'll show you my cooking skills. When I was in America, I cooked for myself. Sometimes I made meals for my friends too. Really? That's amazing. You don't look as if you have ever picked up a pot and pan in your life. I thought a rich boy like you would have had a maid to look after you. When Irie was a student, she had a friend from abroad who was so rich and pampered that her parents, afraid that she would have a hard life, had paid a lot for someone to come and do everything for her. They had believed that this way she would not get worn out and could devote herself to her studies. However, the plan had backfired, and whenever she had had the chance, she had gone out to enjoy herself instead of studying. I had a tough life when I was a child. I misunderstood the grown-ups. I thought that nobody loved me, so I ran away from home and went to live in Rio when I was just 17. Can you believe that? I have ever been a shoe-shy boy for tourists. As he started to tell his own story, Irie's eyes grew so big and round, with amazement that Enrique could not stop himself from laughing. It's true? It's true. When I was a child, I could not really get along with my mother's father. Whenever he caught sight of me, he always found some excuse to criticize me and compare me with my father. He said that I had too much Italian blood in my veins and that I would grow up to be irresponsible like my father, incapable of doing real business, and only fit to be an artist, sitting drawing pictures. He accused me of many things until I ended up hating my father for abandoning my mother, little sister, and me. We had to go and live with my mother's parents in the center of Sao Paulo. What did your father do? What could he do except what had happened? I never knew that. Later, my father had tried to contact my sister and me. He couldn't find a trace of me, as I had been determined to hide my tracks until I myself was ready to come back and face everyone again. After I ran away from home, I went to work in Rio. I saved hard until I had enough money to buy a plane ticket to go and study in America. Luckily, I was a good student and got scholarships all the time. I didn't have to ask anyone for money. Everything went well, and when I graduated, I got a good job. I had no thought of returning to Brazil, except to visit my sister, until one day, my father's lawyer contacted me to tell me that my father had passed away, leaving me a legacy to manage in whatever way I wanted. I was shocked, as I had never thought that the father who I had always loathed would bequeath me anything. Only drawing and selling paintings was not enough to even look after a family. What nobody knew was that, along with some relatives, father had secretly invested some money he had inherited in a business in Rio. If the business had been profitable at that time, I would have sold it and given the money to Sasha, just as I gave the plantation to her and her husband. But that was not the case. The national economy was in a poor state, and the business was running at a loss. It was a challenge to my abilities to make it profitable, so I decided to stay on. Slowly everything started to improve until finally the business came out of the red and started to expand. By then, the company was second to none in the same field. He spoke of his own abilities with great pride, as indeed was suitable for a self-made man who owed his success to nobody else. I felt a new respect for him. She liked men who were capable, clever, and leaders. Yet the flaw in her heart still prevented her from accepting that the time they had spent together, his courtesy and tenderness, and the story of his suffering in the past had made Irie fall in love with him. We must be the strangest couple in the world. We have spent these past days telling each other about our past instead of honeymooning like other couples. Elegant words made Irie blush. With embarrassment, Enrique observed but did not say anything and went back into the kitchen. If you want to be my assistant, come with me. When sounds of activity started to come from the kitchen, Iris swallowed her shyness and followed him. They prepared an easy American meal, salad, and freshly grilled steak. Iris volunteered to make the salad dressing while he was grilling the steak on the ranch. Everything was delicious and could not be faulted. The steak was soft and tasty and not overdone. Iris' salad dressing was also delicious. After eating, they helped each other collect and wash the dishes before going to relax in the sitting room. There was an old record player in the room, and Iris, never having seen one like this before, could not resist going to take a closer look at it. It belonged to my father, explained Enrique. He took good care of it, so it can still be used. To prove his point, He selected an old record, taking it out of the yellowing sleeve and putting it into position. The turntable revolved a couple of times, then the sound of a sweet and sentimental classical melody filled the air. "Come over here and listen with me," Enrique said, beckoning Irie over to where he was sitting on the soft, thick carpet. Irie herself did not understand why she complied so easily. "Shall we have a few sips of wine? It will make the music sound even sweeter." So saying, he walked over to the bar in one corner of the sitting room. The bar must have been a recent addition to the house, and Irie saw him open a bottle of chilled wine from the fridge and pour it into two long-stemmed wine glasses. Coming back over to her, he gave her one glass before flopping down on the carpet beside her. "Cheers to our future happiness. If you don't drink it all, you will lose face." Irie raised the wine glass to her lips and drank it all. After that, she failed to notice that Enrique refilled her glass every time the level of the wine dropped. She became pleasantly relaxed until engrossed in listening to the lovely music. She slipped down and lay back on the thick, soft carpet. A seductive drowsiness overwhelmed her, numbing her consciousness until, unable to pull herself back from the brink of self-abandonment, Enrique carried her unresistingly up to the bedroom. "Wait for me here. Don't go anywhere. When everything is okay, I will come back and take you back to our home." The following morning, arriving back in Rio, Irie had asked Enrique to take her to her brother's house. Enrique's secretary had called him on the drive back to the city, and he had told her that he had some urgent business to attend to. Before they had married, neither of them had talked about where they would live. Irie had not been interested, as she was intending to divorce him as quickly as possible, and had not wanted him to waste any more money when he was already honoring her with a lavish wedding. The phase our home caused her to pause, but knowing he was in a hurry, she did not ask him anything. Enrique kissed her goodbye before quickly driving away. Irie stood watching until the white Mercedes-Benz sports car was out of sight, then picked up the suitcase in which she had packed her honeymoon clothes and in which her wedding dress was now also neatly folded. She entered the house, unable to explain to herself why Enrique's departure had suddenly made her feel lonely. Maybe she reasoned being together all the time during the past week had brought them closer, but the feeling would soon pass. It was only natural. She tried to comfort herself and cheer herself up. The house was quiet, but this was normal for a Sunday. When everybody went to church, they would be back in the afternoon. She was quite relieved, as she could spend some time in private and would not have to answer everyone's questions, especially about the honeymoon. After taking a shower and changing into casual clothes, Irie went out to sit on her balcony. She looked aimlessly over the deep blue sea and the towering mountains in front of her. In her mind, she was thinking over the previous evening. What does he think? Does he think I was willing and also willing to marry him as soon as I heard the story from my brother? Or does he think I'm just like all the other women he has been out with? After making love to her, Enrique had apologized and she had forgiven him. It was not only his fault. He had every right to sleep with the woman to whom he was legally married. She was only upset that she had to prepare herself to accept that He would soon tire of her and cast her aside, just like all the other women in his life. Why are you sitting here by yourself? Where's Enrique? Karen said, finding her adopted daughter sitting pensively like this and coming to put an arm around her shoulder. He has some important business to attend to urgently. I asked him to drop me off here on the way so that I would have time to talk to you. Karen nodded with apparent understanding, but in her heart, she suspected that something must be amiss. She had been bothered since she had first heard the news that her daughter was to marry a foreign man who she had known for such a short time. It was uncharacteristic of Irie to decide something quickly like this, especially when the issue at stake was such an important one as marriage. She tried to believe that it had been love at first sight, but that also seemed unlikely. Seeing her daughter like this now seemed to show that her fears were not groundless. When will you go back to America? Have you fixed the date yet? Irie tried to suppress her own feelings, not wanting her mother to suspect anything. I've booked the ticket for next week. Cody wants me to stay longer, but I'm worried about my house. It's empty and the lawn will be overgrown, as I did not arrange for anyone to look after the garden while I was away. Karen's concern was real, as in America, householders have a legal obligation to keep their lawns neat and tidy. If they get overgrown, the neighbors become irritated and even complain to the local authorities. I'm thinking of going with you. Why? For goodness sake. Karen sounded startled. I want to go back and make arrangements to leave my job. Surely you can just send a letter and ask Jack to manage everything. It's not the same as doing it myself. And another thing, I want to arrange everything about the house in Houston. Then there will be no problems in the future. Have you thought through carefully your intention to give the house to your half-brother and half-sister? Yes, I don't want them to think that I only wanted mother's inheritance. If that's the real reason you want to go back, then I understand. You have married a Brazilian, so you will settle down here permanently. Enrique won't want you to be worried about this and that. Yes, that's right. Irie's answer led Karen to believe that Irie had already talked this over with her husband, and so she did not say anything anymore. Her suspicions on entering the room and seeing her daughter sitting and staring vacantly and had disappeared, believing now that Irie had been musing about Katana and nothing else. Aren't you hungry yet? I have not seen you eat anything from the tray that the air hostess brought for you. Karen asked some days later on the flight back. Not really. I slept late last night. Waiting for Enrique, I suppose. He's a strange man, disappearing all the time. He hasn't been here to see you since he brought you back. Is there something wrong? Won't he be angry that you are here all the time? He has his reason. Irie did not let her mother know that since the day Enrique had brought her back to her brother's home, she had not heard a word from him. The only thing she had received was a document from Maria, his secretary. Enrique has transferred the ownership to Pam and me. Irie had told her brother. Actually, Enrique wants you to manage everything by yourself, but you cannot be the sole owner. because according to Brazilian law, although a foreigner has the right to be the owner of a company in Brazil, he or she cannot hold more than 49% of the shares. You are married to Enrique, so you have the rights to his assets. The fact that he has put Pam's name also shows his good intention. But as we agreed, he has to give everything back. Don't you want anything like other people? Things should revert to their original owners. You are stubborn. If Enrique knew this, what would he think? You don't have to tell him. Ivy had been as her word and had transferred her own share to her nephew, Jared. If you are just going to sit there, deep in your thought, I'm going to sleep, said Karen. All right, I'm ready to get some rest too. Irie, however, did not sleep, but went back to looking out of the plane window. Where was Enrique now? Had he gone off with some other woman? He had disappeared completely, sending no news. Irie raised a hand to wipe away her tears. Karen, sitting next to her, was already fast asleep and was unaware of her daughter's distress.